This is from Brian Kahn. Some of the first aerial imagery, I guess we're getting into climate change news here. Some of the first aerial imagery I've seen from Lake Charles after Laura, entire homes just wiped off the map. And we'll go into this a little bit. Hurricane Laura sparks a chemical plant fire, which is also something I wanted to cover today. Continues to wreak havoc on the Gulf Coast. This is actually from yesterday, but still moving as a very strong storm through the Midwest. Hurricane Laura's devastation is becoming clear as light spreads over the Gulf Coast. The storm hit in the heart of the petrochemical country, raising concerns even before landfall of leaks and spills that seem to unfortunately be coming to pass. A chlorine leak from biolab facility near Lake Charles, Louisiana on Thursday morning sparked horrific fires in surrounding refinery facilities. Storm chaser Jeff Piotrowski tweeted a photograph of a cloud drifting across the highway. 911 is aware they are overwhelmed, he wrote. Chlorine poses a major health hazard to people, adding another layer of danger for residents who are unable to evacuate. Anyways, I'm going to look at some of these images. Lots of windows blown out. Excuse me. Houses razed. Lots of damage in the area. There is other news about Hurricane Laura. Where is it? I may have lost it. But apparently, oh, I lost it. I can't find it. Anyways, this is from Jeff Goodell. Despite what Mike Pence says, there are no miracles in America or anywhere else. We humans are on our own. If we F this up, it's on us. And this is titled Climate Apocalypse Now in Rolling Stone. Maybe it's just a failure of human imagination to understand what is coming. I'm not a religious person or someone who sees messages written in clouds, but if I were, I might believe that Mother Nature is trying to tell President Donald Trump something right now. California is burning. A Category 4 hurricane with winds of 150 miles per hour just blasted in the Louisiana coast, and nearly 180,000 are reported dead from a viral outbreak that is just a harbinger of what one scientist calls a new pandemic era. Do you think all this is going to get his attention? I mean, clearly it's not. On the eve of Trump's big speech to accept the Republican nomination, if Mother Nature had a voice, I imagine she would say something like this: "Pay attention to me, asshole, or you, and every generation of humans to come will regret it." Well, it's kind of saying that to everybody, don't you think? Trump is not alone in being the bearer or the non-hearer of this message. There are a lot of people who are ignoring this message. Even people who accept that climate change is real, but they don't want to accept that impending doom is real. But that's not what Mother Nature is saying. Mother Nature, a corny but somehow still useful phrase that goes back to the Greeks, doesn't say things directly. She doesn't give a shit about Trump or his reelection or about you or me or the coastline of Louisiana or the majestic coast redwoods in California. She operates with the cold, careless laws of physics and chemistry in the vast space of time. Our magnificent Earth is a random collection of molecules, a mote of dust flying in the 150 mile per hour winds of Hurricane Laura. Despite what Mike Pence says, there are no miracles in America or anywhere else. We humans are on our own. If we F this up, it's on us. And of course, we are effing it up. We are heating up the planet so fast that large parts of it will be uninhabitable by the end of the century. We are amping up storms like Hurricane Laura. It is the strongest storm to hit the Louisiana coast since 1856 and turning the Gulf Coast into a shooting gallery. Which city is going to get hit next? New Orleans, Houston, Tampa, Miami, they are all living on borrowed time. And it's not just hurricanes. As Greenland melts and Antarctica falls into the Southern Ocean, they will be swamped by rising seas, as will virtually every other low-lying city in the world. The rich will huddle behind seawalls. The poor will flee or drown. We are mowing down rainforests, destroying the lungs of the planet, and pushing animals and the viruses they carry into new places, increasing the risks of spillover into humans. You think COVID-19, with a fatality rate of about 1%, depending on risk group, is bad? Wait until Nipah virus, with a fatality rate of 50% or higher, morphs in a way that allows asymptomatic transmission. Wait until Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, which currently is transmitted by Llama ticks and causes Ebola-like bleeding out of every orifice, figures out a way to leap into Asian longhorn ticks, an invasive species that is already spreading wildly across the U.S. If that happens, you will go for a walk in the woods, and a week later, you're bleeding from your nose, gums, and ass. The hotter the planet gets, the faster it burns. Earlier this year, bushfires in Australia burned through 72,000 square miles and killed several billion animals. Now California and Colorado are aflame. As Zeke Hosfather, a climate scientist at the Breakthrough Institute, recently tweeted, one telling aspect of California wildfires is that the number of fires has actually declined, while average area burned has increased more than threefold. It's changing conditions, drier fuels from a changing climate, greater fuel loading from fire suppression that are to blame. In parts of California, the fire season is now 50 days longer than in 1979. Studies of the western United States suggest... Actually, fire season is all year round, by the way. It's not 50 days longer. It's 365 days a year. We have wildfires in every season of the year now. So it's worse than even that. I could tell you about the slow death of the Great Barrier Reef. I could tell you about marine heat waves that are radically transforming undersea ecosystems and devastating fish stocks and fishermen's livelihoods. I could tell you about my recent visit to Antarctica, where I witnessed the slow motion collapse of the Thwaites Glacier, a chunk of ice the size of Florida, which, if it tumbles into the ocean, could raise sea levels by 10 feet. The catalog of planetary chaos is endless. It is more visible today than it was yesterday, and the changes that are underway are accelerating. There is no magical boundary where we cross over into a lost world when the planet becomes uninhabitable, but we are on a journey in that direction. Luckily, there are signs we are waking up to the risks we face. Recent polls show that the number of Americans who feel passionately about climate change is rising sharply. The Green New Deal, a policy framework that for the first time frames the climate crisis in all its human dimensions, is increasingly popular and helped shape Joe Biden's ambitious climate plan. Okay. Global carbon dioxide emissions are still rising, but only at half the rate they were in the 2000s. Coal, the most CO2-intensive fossil fuel, peaked in 2013, has been in free fall ever since. No, that's a lie, actually. Sorry. Coal use has doubled in the last 10 years, so that right there is an outright lie. But it sure feels good to say it, doesn't it? In many parts of the country, electricity generated from clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels. Nightmare scenarios where global emissions triple by the end of the century are increasingly unlikely. Okay. And we are beginning to adapt. I don't know. I don't know if they're unlikely. It depends on if we do anything or not, or quickly enough. Urban forests are being planted in many cities to offer shade from the heat. Coastal cities are changing zoning laws to encourage people to build in less flood-prone areas. And in places like Paradise, California, which burned to the ground in 2018, city officials are making plans to rebuild in ways that greatly reduce fire hazards. Well, that's great. We can rebuild it. We will be bigger, stronger, faster, but still the scale and ambition of our actions are nowhere near what is necessary. Ding. To avert the worst of the climate crisis, we need to get to zero emissions by 2050. False. False. The IPCC said we had 12 years. That was 2 years ago. We have 10 years to turn this around. So 2050 is way too late. Jeff. Better zoning laws aren't going to save coastal cities. They need to be reimagined entirely. How about reimagining our entire industrial civilization? How about reimagining our entire economy, growth economy? We need to see the climate crisis as racial and environmental justice issues. Like the COVID-19 pandemic, it doesn't hit everyone equally, and generations of structural racism and poverty need to be addressed with as much energy and ambition as we put into reducing carbon pollution. Maybe it's a failure of human imagination to understand what is coming. Maybe it's a failure of democracy and the media, including writers like myself. After all, this is a vital turning point in the climate crisis at a moment when most scientists agree it is the last chance to save a stable climate. America elected a president who sees science as a church for losers and who believes the climate crisis is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese. The climate crisis was not created by Trump. It was created by the industrialized nations of the West who burned fossil fuels to build cities, fight wars, and grow rich. And that actually is still going. And the entire idea of the Green New Deal is to continue that going, right? Maybe not the burn fossil fuel parts, but you still want to build cities. You still want to fight wars. You still want to grow rich. You still want to gobble up forests and resources. For a long time, we were blissfully ignorant of the consequences of that fossil fuel binge, but now we are not. And now we're at a point where every ton of CO2 we dump into the atmosphere creates a hotter, riskier, more dangerous world. And the man who could lead us out of this, who could begin a journey of carbon redemption, just doesn't give a shit. Maybe the real message that Mother Nature is sending with these storms and fires in the midst of the Republican National Convention is not to Trump, but to us. And it says this: you can have 4 more years of Trump, or you can have a habitable planet, but you can't have both. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Voting for Biden is not going to give you a habitable planet. So sorry to tell you. But you know, if you think that, Godspeed. If the climate is a reason to vote for Biden, you know, and that's a good reason for you, go for it. Godspeed. Let me know how that works out in 2024 or 2028. Or let me know how that works out if Biden wins. I don't know. Anyways, you know, it's good that articles like this are being run in the Rolling Stone. It's good that people are talking about this. It's good that people are writing about this. I wish that the information could be better or more in line with reality. That would be nice. I'm going to cover one more thing today. This is interesting news, and we'll just take this as a win. This is from August 25th, proving a different world is possible. Exxon dropped from the Dow Jones after a 92-year run. Did you all hear this? That's weird. Why is it doing that? Big oil has fallen. Our job, has it really fallen? Our job is to make sure they don't take us down with them. Such, you know, majestic declarations, but I'm sorry, but big oil has not fallen. But this is an interesting wrinkle in our current times. Climate campaigners on Tuesday marked a major milestone in the fight to eliminate the use of fossil fuels and transition to a green energy economy, as ExxonMobil was dropped from the S&P Dow Jones Industrial Average after nearly a century. The oil giant, the oldest member of the Dow, was replaced on the index by software company Salesforce, as more than 100,000 people were displaced by wildfires raging across California. A third year of global Fridays for Future climate action protests kicked off, and the Republican Party was rebuked for failing to even mention the planetary emergency on the first night of its national convention. The finance world, 350.org executive director May Bove said, has been forced to wake up and cut ties with these climate criminals. Big oil has fallen, Bove said. Our job is to make sure they don't take us down with them. Fossil fuel companies like Exxon knew and lied for decades about the main cause of the devastation devastating impacts we're now experiencing across the globe. From fires, storms, and floods to droughts and rising seas, we are rising up to make polluters pay for their destruction. Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org, credited climate campaigners who have spent decades educating the public about the climate crisis and dangerous effects of extracting fossil fuels from the earth and demanding a transition to renewable sources of energy like solar and wind power. Here's a tweet from Bill McKibben. As recently as 2011, Exxon was the biggest company on earth. Now it's been booted from the Dow Jones Index. Thanks to all who have helped. In April, oil prices fell below $0 per barrel for the first time on record, prompting calls by climate action advocates to nationalize the oil industry rather than continuing to prop it up. Yeah, that would be really awesome if either party was interested in doing that, and they are not. They are not. Bernie Sanders wanted to do that, but the Democratic Party is beholden to its donors, and so they absolutely made sure they did everything in their power to make sure that Bernie Sanders was not the nominee. Why? Because they're beholden to their donors, just like the Republican Party. Meanwhile, the solar and wind sectors, but that would be really awesome if we nationalized the oil industry and then just dissolved it. And maybe confiscated their loot. Meanwhile, the solar and wind sectors have grown at a rapid rate in recent decades, with job growth in the renewable field outpacing oil. Exxon's deep fall today is another powerful reminder of how fossil fuels are too volatile to be the basis of a resilient economy, said Bove. It is past time for Exxon to recognize that it is not only one of the most responsible for the climate crisis, but also that its assets are quickly becoming stranded as we move towards more sustainable, resilient, and regenerative economic systems based on renewable, accessible, and just energy sources. She sounds very optimistic, and, I'm happy about that. I feel like we have to be, optimistic is fine. I feel like we need to be realistic as well. A poll taken last year by Business Insider found that a majority of Americans favor transitioning away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy sources, and aligned with other recent findings by Gallup. 7 oil companies have downgraded their assets by at least $87 billion in the last 9 months, while more than 1,200 institutions representing more than $14 trillion in assets have committed to fossil fuel divestment. None of this is to say Exxon is officially done for, or that it doesn't still hold massive power, wrote Brian Kahn at Earther. A company worth $175 billion with its tentacles latched onto the Republican Party is still a formidable foe. It's latched onto the Democratic Party too, Brian Kahn. Oh, Jesus Christ. The Democratic Party just took their pledge to stop subsidizing fossil fuel companies out of their platform. Why? Because they're still beholden to them. It's not just the Republicans. Please, 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 please. Stop with this false dichotomy. But it does show a different world is possible. Fingers crossed the Dow Jones can get Chevron out of there next. Anyways, this is somewhat good news. We'll take this as a win. If you are climate aware or concerned about the climate or concerned about climate change. Hey guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And you can support the channel at the links below, PayPal, Patreon, Square. Also, if you'd like to watch the live streams, you can watch the live streams on my Patreon channel. You can subscribe for as little as $1. So hopefully I will see you over there, and thanks so much.